for years, really long time, I never talked about my story because it was embarrassing to me. It was like I wanted to get away from that. Like, that's not who I am. But now I realize that where I came from created a drive and an appreciation for relationships, for people, for connecting. We connect in the valleys. We don't connect up here.
Right.
You know, and so in this business, but in anything, you know, you connect where I can meet people where they are. And I may not have the same story as you, and I may not, you know, have been through the same walk as you. Of course, everybody has their story, but I connect with the person. Just like you said when you hired me, you were like, I know you can do the job, but what is your story?
Welcome to a Wiser Retirement Podcast. We believe the best financial advice should always be conflict free. I'm your host, Casey Smith. Getting into Financial Freedom Days, my co-host, Shawna Theriault. Hey, Shawna.
Morning.
So today I'm doing good. Thank you. Today is going to be a little different episode. We're profiling Shawna today. And I guess I'll skip ahead a little bit and say Shawna is a badass.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
So I'm always interested to meet women in our industry that are, you know, in my ballpark age and older, because I think for young ladies in financial services, it's so much easier now than it was when you were coming through financial services, which was the same time as me.
Yeah.
And even for Missy, who's slightly ahead of us, because I feel like a woman in any male-dominated industry has to be the smartest one in the room, because you have to be able to prove that you're worthy of being there, where I think sometimes males are just like, oh, it was in my fraternity. Oh, he's a buddy of mine. Or, you know, they just get accepted because of that, or they're in the Friday night drinking club or whatever, right? And so
there's some firms that are still that way.
Oh, I say majority of firms are still that way.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You have a female presence, but it's all in support roles, not in leadership roles.
Right.
Yes, there are a lot of old crusty white males, and there's no shortage of old crusty white males in our industry who are still using mutual funds. I mean, I make fun of them for other reasons, not just because they don't have women on their staff, but they're still using mutual funds and picking individual stocks, which is anyway, don't even get me started on that. That's a conversation with me and Andrew.
It's a whole nother show.
Making fun of those people. But yeah, so, you know, how long have you been here? It's
5 months.
It's only 5 months.
I know. It's funny telling clients I've been here for 5 months, but I've been in the industry for over 20. And so it's like, okay, yes, I still feel like sometimes that feeling I have to prove myself, right?
Yes, that's true. 5 months was not the answer I thought I was going to get. I was thinking we're at the 1 year mark.
1 year? No.
So, all right. So we had a fast start. We'll say that. So when you hire someone with lots of experience, you're hiring a partner. You're not hiring someone who has to learn something. Now there is the wiser way, right? So that we had to learn the wiser way a little bit,
systems and
right, and how our unique process to planning. But it's anyway. So your influence here has been very positive, and I'm happy to have you here. You are a CFP, so you're a certified financial planner, and you're also a CPA.
Yes.
But you don't prepare tax returns. Let's get that really clear. Shawna's not preparing your tax return, but it comes in handy for tax planning.
Yes.
And you're also a CDFA, which is the divorce
financial analyst
designation for women who are going through divorce, or men. It's good to hire a CDFA as you're going through the process. Missy's a part of that as well. So it wasn't always sunshine and roses.
No.
And here you are at the pinnacle of your career at the best firm ever, right?
Absolutely.
And so I was interesting. I remember in our interview process, I sat down and said, "Tell me your story," because I was very intrigued by it because it didn't seem like, looking at the resume, I was like, this doesn't seem like a normal path to me. And what I saw was a lot of grit and perseverance.
Thank you.
And so I thought, I know about grit and perseverance and paving ways when there weren't ways before. So now that we know that you made it, right? So we're going to give the ending at the beginning. Let's talk a little bit about where you got started. So where did you grow up?
Sure. And so I appreciate that. And first of all, it is the best place to work because, something happens when you take where I came from, what I've developed, what I've grown into, and then you meld that with a firm that has the same values as me. Not that any place that I've been at before didn't. Every place that I've worked, I've been very appreciative for. And it was the right place at the right time. And this industry raised me. But being somewhere where I can do this, where I can actually be authentically me, and someone actually says to me, well, what is your story? And thinks that I'm a badass and recognizes and gives, approval or credence to what I did, like that is meaningful to me. So it's meaningful work, not only what I do with clients, but when you're working for somebody that cares about how you started, that's huge. That's huge because that connects with people. I grew up in Orlando, long story, but
next to Mickey.
I did. I love Mickey. I'm going there this week, actually. It's my stomping ground. But, it was, my parents did the best that they could with what they had. But I wanted something different. I didn't want to live in the same way in which they did. I love my parents. My mom taught me unconditional love. My father taught me really hard work. But I wanted something different for me in my future than where I started. And so I actually moved out when I was 16. And that's very unusual. And my oldest daughter moved out when she was 16 for different reasons. And I'll talk about that a little bit. But I moved out when I was 16. And so I saw that I needed to change something. And a drive was created in me that I just can't explain. It was survival at first, of course, because it's like, I have to change something. This isn't working for me. And so I always excelled at school. I always did well in school. I was always in the first row of school. I was always asking questions and raising my hand. I was always in advanced classes. I loved to learn. Like I just loved it. And I had so many mentors in school that I would lean on a lot when I was growing up. And because of my home life. And so when I decided to take the bull by the horns and take over at 16, I graduated high school a year early by taking 2 years of high school in 1 year. Because in Florida, the law states that you can work full-time or emancipate yourself. At least it did then. I'm 46 now. If you are either 18 or you have a high school diploma. So I took it upon myself to get a high school diploma so that I could move out and work full time. And so I started I started working when I was 16, but something happened, when I was 17 years old, this amazing courier company hired me to learn accounts receivable and payroll. And they taught me I loved numbers. I've always loved numbers. I had no idea what I wanted to do. My family never went to college. They didn't talk about college and I was on my own and I couldn't sign a lease, but I lived with a friend group where I paid rent. I paid my way. There was no free. I didn't have furniture. I didn't need furniture. I was living with a group of friends that were older than me. And so, I worked at a courier company for about a year and a half, and they taught me everything I needed to know about the accounting side. And then I started at a small brokerage firm when I was 18. And that started my career. And I had no idea. I was going to school part-time. I was putting myself through college, going to community college, Valencia Community College in Orlando. So I could only do like 2 classes at a time. And I started at a brokerage firm as the office manager doing accounts receivable payable. So thank gosh for that experience, right? Because I'm telling you, the way this was laid out was like perfectly crafted for me, but I didn't even know it. And I just kept going with my gut and my heart and following what the God was putting in front of me. And again, like I said, it was survival at first, but I started at a brokerage firm and I fell in love with it. I was one of the only females. It was like the broker where they're filling out the trade forms and all of that. But they treated me like the little sister. They took care of me. They raised me. They helped me. I had my stockbroker's license by the time I was 21. I wasn't doing that. I was doing operations. And so at any rate, I signed my first lease when I was 18 years old because then I could. My rent was $450 a month, all utilities included. I didn't have any furniture. I bought a $50 used couch and I cleaned it with a steam cleaner that I rented from Winn-Dixie. And that's what I slept on. And everything that I have built on my own. So I worked at this brokerage firm for a while, and then I started at Charles Schwab at 21 years old, 21 years old. And so that was huge. I loved working at Schwab. I was part of something bigger than myself. It was corporate. They taught me everything. I learned doing all these operations, and I was still going to school some, but it was hard because I was paying for my braces. I was paying for my car. I had my rent. I had all the things I was paying for. So I was cleaning houses at nights and on the weekend. There were times that I didn't have money for food, but as I got through and started, like once I was at Schwab and moving up, I ended up buying my first house when I was 21 by myself. Mm-hmm. I did end up getting a roommate to help, but it was like $90,000 in Winter Springs. I wish I would have held on to it because right. It's worth $400 now, but I didn't.
It's starting to be the higher end district now.
So learn that from me. Hold on to those small properties when you buy them at age 21.
Right.
So at any rate, I just kept working my way through the industry. And at some point I stopped doing school because I was like, okay, I could do what my parents did and work, but I hit a glass ceiling. And, I ended up switching to the RA side, and doing my registered investment advisor similar to us. Mm-hmm. And so doing my, CFP first. It was back when the CFP, you didn't have to have a college degree yet. Mm-hmm. I had 2 chances to take it because they were changing the rules that you had to have a college degree. And so I treated my first time as my only time because I didn't want to be up against the second time.
Right.
And so, I just worked my way up through the industry, became an advisor, switched over to the other side. I did school online. So I ended up, like I said, I hit a glass ceiling. And so I was tired of not being able to be promoted, even though I'd worked so hard and they knew my work ethic, but it was like, you have to have a college degree. And so I did that. I finished that within 2 years. I did it online, did a degree in accounting, and then went on to do the CPA so that I would understand. I always loved numbers, like I said, and I wanted to understand the ramifications of the recommendations I was making. And so, I just worked my way up through it. But the whole time I was creating like this discipline that I didn't recognize until later, and so it's the discipline of focusing on, what you want and then habit stacking on that. I think James Clear talks about that habit stacking, but I've been doing that all along and I never recognized that. And so just looking at, sometimes I forget where I came from. I don't forget in terms of like, I don't ever want to go back there. But I used to, like you said, when I was, this industry raised me. It gave me opportunities. It gave me mentors and I sought them out. It's not like I was just sitting there helpless. Like I have this drive, and it's not a drive to be better than anyone. It's a drive that I want more, I want more to be able to give more, if that makes sense. And I didn't align with that until I was probably in my 40s or 30s, late 30s, that I realized what my drive was. When you align with what you're feeling inside on the outside, it's just a beautiful thing. And so I've never done it to have accolades. I've never done it to, beat people around me. I've done it so that, relationally, I've always felt like it's been hard for me. I was raised in this industry, if you will. And when I started, it was a male dominated industry, but I don't feel like they ever treated me like that. Although I always felt inferior. Like I felt like I had to prove myself because I was always the youngest in the room. And a female. And so I listened a lot. I didn't talk a lot. I talk more now, but I listened a lot because I needed to soak it up and learn. But I've had so many people help me along the way. And by help me, I don't mean financially. I mean, guide me, lead me. Okay, this is what you do. And I do that. And what I do now, and not that I know all the answers because I don't, I'm still growing, but I'm open to growing and I want to grow more. But I always make it a point to turn around and help the person behind me because I feel like so many people have done that for me. And, for years, really long time, I never talked about my story because it was embarrassing to me. It was like I wanted to get away from that. Like, that's not who I am. But now I realize that where I came from created a drive and an appreciation for relationships, for people, for connecting. We connect in the valleys. We don't connect up here.
Right.
And so in this business, but in anything, you connect where I can meet people where they are. And I may not have the same story as you, and I may not, have been through the same walk as you. Of course, everybody has their story, but I connect with the person. Just like you said when you hired me, you were like, I know you can do the job, but what is your story? Like that is it right there. So being able to connect with people who come in, I don't sell anything. I never have. And that's why I feel that I'm good at this, because I care and I'm not trying to sell anything to anybody. So I'm trying to help them.
You go through, you put yourself through school. You have a master's.
I do have a master's now. Yes. I did it all online.
So you did that. And then you did that after you got the CFP.
Yes.
And then, so most people I feel like would stop there, but you kept going. And the CPA, what drove you to do the CPA designation?
So what drove me to do the CPA designation is I was frustrated that I couldn't understand the taxes. So one of my best friends always has this joke, well, like if Shawna doesn't know it, she'll just go get a degree in it, right. And that's not really true. But I did it so that I would understand. Because when you're looking at somebody's stuff, taxes is a huge piece of it. It doesn't drive the decision, but you have to understand that. And so I felt like there was this black box. And I felt that way about estate planning too. And like I started going to all the meetings with the attorneys so that I could really understand it. So now it's like when I look at a client situation, I feel like I know the situation. Like I can figure out. Now, I don't always know all the answers and things change all the time. You can't know everything. But I know enough that like in my mind, I can look at this big picture and I can't explain it to you. Like I can look at the flows of how the estate plan's going. I can look at the numbers. So I did it so that I could truly understand and give the best advice possible and not feel like I didn't know the answer to that.
It's funny. It never dawned on me to get a CPA designation, but this is probably, I don't think I've ever talked about this, but I was in the same boat. I was like, okay, taxes have so much to do with financial planning. Yet in the brokerage business, they say consult with your tax advisor, but the tax advisors aren't doing tax planning.
No,
they only do tax returns
because they're drinking from a fire hose in April.
Right. So I was like, somebody's got to figure this out. I think it's going to have to be me. And I did a tax correspondence course. Mm-hmm. Like I felt like it was like the 1950s and I had, all they had was number 2 pencils or something, but I would get mailed these sections and I would study and I'd have to take this little test and I have to literally mail it back. And I was still an airline pilot at the time. And so I would be like studying this stuff on my overnights and everything else, but it was literally a tax correspondence course. But now I can look at a 1040. I know exactly what's going on. I know what all the schedules mean. Mm-hmm. And I know everything I need to know, but I didn't do the CPA.
You don't need that. But I can tell you, and not that I have to, I'm very solid in myself and in my knowledge that I don't feel like I have to prove myself anymore, if that makes sense.
Right.
Now that I'm not the youngest person in the room, that does help.
Right.
But I also feel comfortable in just talking about things. But I have had clients tell me that it's extremely helpful to be able to talk to people that understand, or advisors that understand the taxes and even run tax projections. Cause it's like, I don't really know what's happening in April. I'm like, well, I can easily look at it for you. It doesn't, unless it's overly complicated with K1, like if it's really overly complicated, I don't do it on a day-to-day basis. I mean,
quite honestly, the age of a, stockbroker, I mean, that's dead. There's a few around because there's still some 80-year-olds who call their broker, but that industry is for the most part, it's kind of, I think, stifle still that way. They're like old brokers, but outside of that, I guess Edward Jones to some extent, but even they're trying to reinvent themselves now. So when it comes down to asset management, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine recently who's also in the business. And I told him, I said, asset management is a commodity. Like robots are doing this now. The value of an advisor has so much to do with the plan. And if you look at the planning, even retirement planning just by itself, people use retirement planning in very general terms. Mm-hmm. But if you look at the module of just retirement planning. I have X dollars, I'm saving X dollars. Will I have enough for my future? That's a time value of money calculation. And that's all planning. That's all the planning that most people do. So the valuable advisor is now beyond that, where you're looking at the insurance side, you're looking, but also tax. And that comes back into the conversation of why does an ultra high net worth person need a financial planner? They need it because you need someone to figure out the tax strategy. That's the difference between our firm and so many other firms out there, is like no one's really touching the tax side. But yeah.
Well, so another huge thing with that is the estate plan too. And I know I talk about it all the time, but that's where I feel the most value and trust is that when I can dig in with a family and they open up to me about hard things like finances, but also family dynamics. We all have those family dynamics. And sometimes they don't want to talk about those, but they trust me. And sometimes I open up to them now too, because again, I'm not, my story is not my fortress. It's my fuel. Right. And so I don't sit there and go into my story, but I can connect with them in those hard moments. If they have situations where a child is, drinking or whatever, if they have those hard situations and they're sharing and opening up to you and constructing something that works for the dynamics of their family, that's huge.
Yeah.
And so
I did the, with the estate plan. Actually, I have an estate plan designation. I think I don't ever use it. It's kind of silly.
Yeah.
But I did the same thing. I said, okay, we got to figure out estate planning, and basically just took the course on that. And I don't even remember what the acronym of the designation is, but it was enough for me to educate me on how to handle estate planning from that, all the different types of trust. There's so many different types of trust.
There are.
But
you can create trust.
So you did the CPA, and then you kind of hit a ceiling, right? At the firm you were at the time?
I did. I did. There was a lot of different dynamics, like, I wanted to be closer to my children because I was commuting every day. There was things like that where it's hard as a mom having your kids in daycare for 12 hours a day. And so that was the reality of my life. And so, but I did hit a ceiling of sorts, or I felt that way. I don't know if that was just self-imposed or, I just felt like I needed a change and a different work-life balance. And I found that, and I did find that I was able to, change firms and have a whole nother subset of growth opportunities for me. And, every place that I have worked, I'm grateful for, because I do feel like every employer that I have been with took, I don't want to say a chance on me because I showed up. Yeah. I mean, it's like sometimes people get you in the room, but you have to keep getting yourself in the room. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like getting, and stepping out of your comfort zone. And what I've learned through this whole thing is that, growth happens outside of your comfort zone. And the more that you're out of your comfort zone, the more growth you will have. And I actually read this is really interesting. I read this from a doctor that was saying that when you put yourself in situations where you feel nervous, I don't mean like jumping off a cliff and doing crazy. I'm not talking about that. But when you put yourself in situations like talking about your story or, putting yourself out there or talking in a room of people when you're scared for public speaking, for example, that's a huge one for people. If you continuously put yourself out there, it actually triggers proteins in your DNA that have never been triggered before. And it changes you from the cellular level up. And it actually changes you and, becomes someone almost even different on the inside. And I can see that. It's where exponential growth happens. And so if you imagine if you put yourself in situations, and I never noticed that I do that, but I do. And even though I've been scared to try things or scared, I was so afraid of not, I don't want to say failing. I've never been afraid of failing because you have to fail in order to grow. But I was always nervous about not growing more. It almost became like, I wanted to just keep growing. And it's just this drive. I have this ability to just put my head down and work. Like if something needs to get done, they call me, and I know that about myself because I'm a getter doner. I can get all the stuff done. And it's like, you can just pile me up and throw me to the wolves and I'll figure it out, and I love that about myself, but sometimes that's lonely too. I mean, because I could work for avoidance of things and just be like, I'm just going to work harder.
Are you curious why annuities keep coming up as a potential investment option? People are often told that annuities can effectively mitigate investment risks and help secure their financial future. However, annuities often benefit the salesperson and might not be the best choice for you as a consumer. To learn more about the various types of annuities, the negatives of owning them, and better investment alternatives, we have a free ebook on our website just for you. To download our ebook, Buyer Beware, Why Do They Keep Trying to Sell You That Annuity? Simply click the link in the episode notes or visit wiserinvestor.com/guides. Now let's get back to the episode.
And I have to understand also that other people don't have my same work ethic, and I can't get frustrated with that. And so I learned that years ago, but that was something that was hard for me too, where it's like, well, it's just simple. You just do you know? And so sometimes I've had to learn as a leader over time, and I've had leadership training that people invested in me. Again, I've had a lot of people invest in me where it's like, okay, you have to recognize where you are and how you work versus how somebody else works. Doesn't make me better or worse, doesn't make them better or worse, but you just have to be able to, you know, be self-aware, but understand where everybody else is coming from too.
Yeah. I think I see the theme here is you've chosen not to be a victim.
Oh.
You could have early on in your young years, you could have said,
yeah,
okay, well, this is how it is, and this is my parents' fault, and whatever, and you just repeat the same cycles of life that everyone else in your family had done, and you chose not to be a victim. You chose to be a hero. Yeah, and that's something that
thank you.
I get frustrated with too. Is people. We both have strong work ethics, but is to see people that just would rather just complain about the situation rather than just, okay, well, let's go fix this and let's do this differently.
Yeah. And I truly do have a heart for people though, that feel like they're stuck. And because I know what that feels like too. And you have a choice. You always have a choice. And sometimes you feel like you don't. I've had extensive conversations with people and friends and family about that. And it's really, I don't know. It's just, you do have a choice. I don't care where you started from. I don't care what is going on. Even if you're 40, you can start over again. I mean, I built myself then and I've rebuilt myself once again in my health journey. And so you can always make the choice. It's really, that's the good and the bad. The good news is it's all up to you. The bad news is it's all up to you. So a lot of people who are in situations, they have control issues because they feel out of control and they don't want people to hurt them. And so they always want to feel like they're in control, which is what I had. I was like, I'll just control the situation so I can make sure that nobody can hurt me, you know? And that's a really hard place because you can't control people around you. You can't control the weather. You can't control the economy. You can't control what your boss does. You can't control what people do. And when you start adding little babies to the mix, and I have 3 daughters, you can't control them either. I mean, when they're younger, maybe, but when they're older and they start having, you know, so if you have this need to be feel in control, to feel secure, it will always end up leaving you frustrated and stressed. And so I really had to say, okay, I can only control me. And that's the beauty, is that I only have to control me. And so when someone's in a life situation like that, they can't control their circumstances. What happened to you, you know, from other people or what you were born into or circumstances or what have you, that is not your fault. I don't know that it's anybody's fault. It just is. And people don't intentionally say, I want to go and, you know, gain a bunch of weight, or I want to become an alcoholic, or I want to ruin my kid's life. Nobody purposely sets out to do that. Things happen in people's lives, and habits are created and things don't change. And it's not our fault what happens to us. Not like I said, I don't care if you're 40 and what's happened, but it is your responsibility to take that trauma or stress or whatever it is and find a way to make it for the good for you. Like, that's your responsibility. Unfortunately, you were strapped with that. This is your cross to bear. But something happens when you carry those crosses, if you will. And so I look at life. I mean, everybody looks at life through their own lens, but the things that I've been through and the things that I've seen, I just look at things through a totally different lens. And I try to look at things through other people's lenses too. And so it's almost an emotional growth experience, I guess, where it's, I don't know. It's a completely different way of thinking, but I do feel and can connect with people that feel like they're stuck or their situation is hard. And everybody does have hard situations, and some harder than others. I can connect with them there and I feel for them. And so, but I can also, show them or tell them like, it doesn't have to be like that, because you 100% have a choice on how you react to it or what you surround yourself with too.
So you go through your well-educated, sought out advisor. But then you also have 3 girls who I imagine have grown up a totally different lifestyle than you grew up with.
They did.
And they probably don't appreciate where you came from and what you and your husband have provided for them. But I saw something really sweet you put on LinkedIn. So you take your daughter to college.
Yeah.
Now she's 16. She's going early.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. She graduated a year early.
Early. Not because she's trying to leave the house, but because
no, because she wanted to do
because
sports.
She's that smart and
yes.
she wanted to do sports. So what was that like dropping her off at college for the first time?
That was really surreal.
When you didn't experience that, but that was one of the goals, right?
Yeah. I mean, I never wanted my kids to be in the same situation I was. And I've always dreamed of like that white picket fence and the house and the dog and the, like that little girl dream that you always dream of, like having a family. That's what I've always wanted. And I have that. And of course it's not perfect. It's not the white picket fence. And, there's all like 3 girls is a lot of emotions and all that. But watching her drive herself, like push herself is amazing. And she has the same work. Actually, all of my girls do. They have a similar work ethic where they just load themselves up with things. And I've never pushed them to do it. They just do it. And so her graduating a year early and me dropping her off at college, I never had that college experience. Like I paid for my college and I did it online while working and having kids,
right.
I had babies at home and I was working full time and I was putting myself through college and paying for it, which I'm appreciative for,
sure.
I'm not complaining about that. But being able to just drop her off, she has an apartment in her car. No one bought me a car, and being able to do that was very surreal for me. And I do think that they do appreciate it, but they don't have the same, they can't possibly. I mean, just like, I don't know, I've lived in your world, it's like they've never had to struggle.
Yeah.
They've struggled in loading up their calendar.
They probably struggle in different ways.
Sure. Because they have things that I never struggled with social media. There's other tensions that teenagers deal, so they've never struggled like that. They've never had to find a meal or make sure that they, have shelter and, stuff like that.
Sleep on a couch from the, that they clean from the cleaner from Winn-Dixie.
Exactly. But I was grateful for that couch.
Absolutely.
I was like, this is my couch. It's mine.
They would not know what to do with that.
No. And so there is an appreciation and a grit and a drive that is created from that. So, do they fully appreciate it? No, they know where I came from though.
Yeah.
They do know where I came from. Can they relate with it? Probably not. Although Claire probably feels, she's my oldest, a little bit like that now, where she's like having to budget for her food and it's like,
well, she's learning to be an
I'm a broke
adult.
college kid. And I'm like, you're not really broke, but okay. Like your cell phone's paid for. But I understand, but it's different than being at home and you just grab stuff out of the fridge.
Yes.
It's all you. So, I mean,
Exactly.
It is different, but it's funny because I look back and I'm like, that was pretty cool that I was in these rooms at such a young age. But I see her now and she's like, I don't want anybody to know that I'm not 18. And I see the same thing in her where it's like, I was like, but honey, and I you can't tell somebody. It's like you were in the same rooms with people 2, sometimes 3 years ahead.
Right.
Before they are there, you're worthy to be there. You've earned your way in that room or that classroom or that cheer team or whatever. Like just lean into that and love that. Don't be boastful,
right?
But just know that you belong there and you shouldn't be embarrassed of you being the youngest, because I'm not saying it means she's ahead, but you've put yourself there in a faster pace than a lot of people, but she doesn't understand that. And how could she? Because she's so young and I can appreciate that. So, it's just funny trying to
Well, it goes back to everyone's basic need, which is acceptance, right?
Yeah.
So she just wants to be accepted.
Well, right. You want friends.
That's all normal.
Well, exactly. And that's the way I was when I was young and at the table and, wanted people to like me. But it's funny. I've had so many people where I was always trying to feel like I belonged or make sure, I said the right thing. When you're young, you're trying to make sure you belong there. I've had so many people tell me like, I want young advisor because I don't want to be like 80 and then my advisor retires because they're whatever, I want my doctors young. I want my advisors young. And I'm sitting here thinking, I've been trying to be old the whole time and you want young people.
Well, there's a fine line. There's 23 and having experienced life. And then there's the 6-year-old advisor. So someone in the middle is what people are looking for.
Well, it's just funny because it's like, I want an advisor to walk beside me through retirement. And I was like, oh, okay.
So what was your drive to move out of client services to become a financial advisor? Why that and not a different area of our industry?
So I really loved operations. I think it gives you a really good foundation to start there because you understand how to service clients and you have a heart for serving and serving internally in terms of your different departments and things. I've always had a heart of service anyway. But my drive was really to grow in my career because there's only so far you can go in operations. But I also I was very intrigued with learning the whole planning process. And so operations, while there's so much to know, I mean, some of it's data entry, but it's really, I built a whole clearing firm from the ground up, like with a group of people. So younger in my career when I was like 19 at that first firm. And that was really cool. So I've done many different aspects of it. And it's not like I just did one piece of it. Like I've done everything in a firm from soup to nuts, And so that's really valuable when you're, supporting a business trying to grow. Like I understand, I think what you need. And I'm like, okay, it's just very helpful to understand the dynamics. And then to help people around you as well. But it was really, I was intrigued about the planning process and just understanding that and just really growing in my career because there's only so far you can go in operations. And so I just, again, that growth thing that I always wanted more and I wanted to continue growing personally and professionally. And so that was just the natural trajectory for me to do that. And I felt very fortunate. Like I said, I've had firms give me opportunities and the firm I was at the time, who I love very much, that's the one I was commuting to, they gave me an opportunity before they had ever, meaning I did my CFP and they promoted me to advisor role before I even had my degree. And they gave me that opportunity. And to my knowledge, and they had told me at the time that they had never done that before. And they still haven't, to my knowledge. You have to have a degree to be an associate, but they knew my work ethic in operations and I had started my degree. And, so long as I finished it, which I did, I finished it actually even faster than I said I would, they would be fine with promoting me first before I even attained that. And so I'm grateful for that because I was able to grow quicker while I was still studying. And they gave, so it's like I mentioned, I feel like I've been although I worked for them and proved myself,
right,
I've still have been given opportunities by people that saw something in me that I wouldn't have otherwise.
So in the end, what do you think led you to Wiser?
It's really, I'd taken a little bit of time to be home with my girls just while Claire was doing her senior year and leaving a year early and all of that. And it was really the connection that I felt. Truly, I love many firms, but I don't want it to be money driven. I want to be my authentic self where I can talk like this, and connect with people. Some firms many places you work, you have like the work person and the home person. Not that I don't bring my stuff to work. That's not what I mean, but being able, and maybe that's just a confidence or like a secure in myself thing too. It's just being able to be who you are no matter where you are. And I feel that here, it felt different. So, that's why I chose to come here, to be honest with you. It feels different coming to work and And, you know, the focus is on serving the client. Like that's all we talk about. We look at the numbers because we're a business. Obviously, you have to look at the numbers. Any good business person would, but that's not the focus. We celebrate the numbers but that's, if you give people what they want and you help people achieve what they want, the money has always come for me. And it's not about the money. It's about helping other people get what they want and the fulfillment from that and helping others. And, you know, work has always been a given for me. I haven't found, it's challenging. And that's why I love this industry because it's changing all the time. But my focus is not the money, but the money has always come because I'm taking care of the people. Mm-hmm. You know?
Yep.
And that's
if you're the best at what you do, people will seek you out.
Right.
And in the end, compensation comes from different ways.
Right.
I mean, it's obviously we don't sell any products here.
No.
I think most of our listeners know that, but there are times that we work with people who can't pay us. And I think most firms try to screen out those type of situations.
Yeah.
We can't do it 100% of the time. We probably do it 25% of the time, according to the data that I see from our team, that 25% of the time we have a consultation that we realize that these people they don't have really money to invest. They don't really have the money to pay us for a flat fee plan.
Right.
But you have someone in need sitting in front of you.
You help them.
And you help them. You've got 45 minutes to pour into this person as much information as you possibly can. And that's what I call the heart of Wiser. And you, in the short 5 months you've been here, which I feel like it was longer than that. We usually don't put people on the website until 3 months in. So this is extremely advanced. But you definitely exhibit that same heart. And that's why we were like, Shawna's got to be a part of this team. Misty's the same way. Michaela,
sure.
William, Grace, they all of us here are on that mission. Now, obviously, we can't run a firm successfully like that, and we'll be out of business if that percentage moves higher than it's supposed to be. But my whole thing was, when I started this firm, is like, look, I'm not always going to be the smartest guy in the room. I don't pretend to be. I like to think that I hire really smart people, and I have really good resources to figure out the answers to problems at times. Mm-hmm. But I figured if God's going to bless me with such a good group, with such a successful company, that if he sends someone to the front door, I'm not going to turn that person away. We're going to figure out how to help that person. And what's very interesting, and our listeners might be surprised by this, is in the interview process, we've had people exit the interview process because when I tell them this is our mission, they say, yeah, that's not for me. And I would say out of 10 people that we interview, 7 will tell us that. Wow. 7 will tell us I'm not in it to help other people. I'm in it to make as much money as I possibly can. Mm-hmm. And they exit the interview process. Isn't that interesting?
That makes me sad for them. Because it's like, if you're not living a purposeful life, what else is there? Like, what is the point? We've
had some really good candidates, and you explained to this. And now I will say that for the most part, the young people coming out of college, you come out of college, you want to you want to change the world, right? You want to make a difference in people's lives. And so the younger generation, we don't experience that as much. Mm-hmm. Now we did have one, in our last round of interviews for planning associates, we did have one that exited himself. We gave him a job offer, actually. Mm-hmm. And I was worried about his ambition, because I was like, man, his ambition is so strong. I don't know if he's going to pause long enough to learn anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to really be effective in people's lives, you got to stop. You got to work on that CFP. You got to learn things.
Yeah.
And he just wanted dollars. He'd already started a couple of companies, his own, I won't get into details because I don't want to, somebody might know him, but yeah. So for him, it's going to be a long journey. I feel like, or he could be extremely successful in creating wealth, but it's going to be empty.
Right.
And it'll take them 10 years to figure that out.
Well, it's like that, it's that whole work ethic again, or, it's like, if you're trying to, find happiness outside of yourself, either by making money or positions or, people, or, if you're looking always on the outside, it's always going to feel empty. Right. It doesn't matter where you are in life.
So it comes down to financial planning as a career is not always about numbers.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it's about coaching. Sometimes I feel like I'm more of a personal, I want to use the word life coach. That's pretty broad, but I would definitely say some form of coaching. I don't have a word for it. And saying, no, you don't have to do this. These are your options.
Yeah.
Right. Now we also have very self-driven individuals, especially the business owners I work with, that I don't have to do a whole lot of that other than sometimes
They just want validation.
They want validation, but then sometimes it's like, you got to think about this differently. Or, a lot of advisors like, you got to put more money in your brokerage account, and because that's what benefits them, where I'm like, you need to put more money in your business because that's ROI is huge. So it those are different kind of conversations, but it's the, so much of our industry or the successful people are connecting with people on an individual level.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, you do that well. I think everyone on our team here does that well.
I agree.
Looking back at your transition or your journey to here, would you have done anything differently? Is there any big thing that you said, hey, I probably misstep here? Or do you think everything just kind of fell in place where it was supposed to fall in place?
That's a great question. It's like, I think about that often, like, would I change anything? And like the early days, although I wouldn't go back, I wouldn't change anything because I don't know that I would have the same drive, work ethic, grit, perseverance, love for living. I can't explain it, how I feel. So I wouldn't change that, even though I wouldn't go back and relive it either, if that makes sense.
No, it does.
So I appreciate where I came from to a point. It broke me, but it also built me.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but as far as my career, no, I don't think I would. I think it's been so far, and I'm loving my 40s more than my 30s even. I just feel like I'm thriving. So, being in my 40s has just been, now I'm coming from a place of emotional maturity with melding my career with knowing myself, which is it's just a really great place to be. I don't know that I would change anything. Maybe my health a little bit, because I had a time period where I wasn't taking care of myself. And so now I'm fully taking care of myself, but it taught me, I do look through a different lens because of that. So for a time period, I was overweight and just, I wasn't managing my health well because I was working so much, using that as an excuse, really. Right. Is all excuses. I was in that throes of life where you have the 3 kids and working and all, that everyone goes through. And sometimes you lose yourself in that a little bit and you put yourself off. Well, I came back and said, I'm not doing this anymore. Again, rebuilt myself. And now the discipline that I have with my health is everything.
Sure.
But I think if I could change that one thing, I would. But I don't know that I would be where I am health-wise now had I not gone through that. Yeah. So I have chills even saying that, because I don't know that I would be as close to God as I am if not going through that period of time. I don't know that I would feel the way that I feel right now in terms of feeling whole inside myself, and not in a boastful way, but feeling gratitude and looking through a different lens had I not gone through that whole period.
So you're mid-career now. What are some of your goals as you look for the next half of your career?
That's really hard. I'm really excited to help grow Wiser. I'm really excited about that because what we're doing here is really fun. I know. I mean, what we're doing here is fun and amazing, and we work with the best people, and our clients are great. And it's really, I love what we do. It's fun. And so growing Wiser, helping my kids thrive is a huge thing too. And just, helping to coach them and mold them and continue doing that. Watching them grow and hopefully, eventually get out of the house. I have one almost out of, she's still on the payroll, if you will, but it's not about the money. It's just watching them thrive. Yeah. And I don't need any more designations.
No more schooling. Right.
I just really making an impact for people and helping them in their heart or meeting them where they are and just continuing to do that and just growing in myself, maybe writing a book.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah. Don't let the cat out of the bag.
No. And so I've actually always wanted to do that myself. So I may do that. I don't know. And just helping others in their heart in that way, and just continuously looking to grow and better myself. So I don't have I have specific goals, but I'm not looking to retire early because I love what I do.
Well, I think that for our listeners, I think that's something that they would have in common is with your story is so many of our people that we work with, I feel like didn't start where they are today. Right. They're not maintaining. So many of our pilots I talked to is like, my parents couldn't rub two nickels together. They're poorer than dirt poor. And here I am, I'm a big Delta pilot making, really good money now. And a lot of people have the same story, but in different ways, obviously. So anyway, I would say that we all admire you here for your grit and your hard work.
Thank you.
And we're happy to have you on this team. And we look forward to bigger and better things with Shawna Theriault as a senior leader. So thank you, Shawna, for sitting down and doing this.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you.
I think we'll wrap this up. My exit notes. Oh my gosh, they put mine in here. Episode 241. If you want to hear me and my story, Heart and History of Wiser Wealth Management with Casey Smith. That's episode 241. And then if you are interested in learning more about our firm, or hey, you can schedule a consultation with the Shawna Theriault right online 24/7 at wiserinvestor.com. Just click on the schedule now link button. Anyway, thanks again, Shawna.
Yeah,
and thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to a Wiser Retirement podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening. That way you don't miss any new episodes. We'd also appreciate if you could leave a rating and review. If you have any questions about anything that was discussed today, head to wiserinvestor.com and reach out. This episode was produced by Rachel Dotson. This podcast is strictly for informational purposes only and is not to be considered as investment advice or solicitation to buy or sell any financial products, securities, digital assets, or any other investment vehicles, or a basis to make any financial decisions. Wiser Wealth Management Incorporated is a registered investor advisor with the SEC. The host and/or guests may personally own securities, digital assets, or other investment vehicles mentioned on this podcast. Neither the host nor guests of the show are compensated for their participation, and no referral fees are paid to or received by any host or guest for clients, listeners, or similar interests. Investments involve risk, and unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Be sure to first consult with a qualified financial advisor, tax professional, insurance professional, and/or legal professional before implementing any strategy discussed herein. Past performance is not indicative of future performance.